Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself. That is why I'm also asking you to end deadly sanctuary cities that protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens. In many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country, they're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
I didn't like the speech because he did not talk about what he was doing to make our lives better.
It is our responsibility to protect Americans, and he does not acknowledge the fact that two Americans, two of my constituents, two of our neighbors were killed.
We did not hear the truth from our president. So let's speak plainly and honestly. And let me ask you, the American people watching at home, 3 questions. Is the president working to make life more affordable for you and your family?
Okay, so we're diving straight into Trump's 2026 State of the Union, the longest one ever. 108 minutes of him trying to flood the zone with immigration panic, tariffs, and the usual tough guy theater. And what matters right now is the pushback. Because when power starts acting like dissent is a crime, the only sane response is resistance. People in the room weren't buying the spin, and the fallout is already turning ugly. Let's watch this together and break it down. If you love explosive content like this and want to see more, click that subscribe button.
One of the great things about the State of the Union is how it gives Americans the chance to see clearly what their representatives really believe. So tonight I'm inviting every legislator to join with my administration in reaffirming a fundamental principle. If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself. That is why I'm also asking you to end deadly sanctuary cities that protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens. In many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country, they're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
Oh, wow. Did you catch that? That wasn't a policy pitch. That was a loyalty test. Stand up. Be ashamed. That's not leadership. That's a strongman doing roll call like he's checking who's allowed in the tribe. And the scam is always the same. He takes a real issue, public safety, and launders it through this cartoon villain narrative where everyone he labels illegal is magically a drug lord or murderer. Meanwhile, the actual criminals he never shuts up about are usually just his props to justify sweeping crackdowns. Also, let's be real. Sanctuary city policy is about whether local cops are forced to be federal immigration agents. That's been litigated and fought over for years. And it exists because communities don't want victims scared to report crimes. And after the SOTU, he's out here reportedly telling elected officials to be sent back. That's the point. Divide, then punish dissent.
You did not like this speech at all. Tell me why.
I didn't like the speech because he did not talk about what he was doing to make our lives better. As Governor Spanberger said, is the president working to make our lives better? No. James Carville said, it's the economy. And it still is the economy. And he's not talking about that at all.
Wait, what about the Trump accounts? What about the tax cuts? Did that move you at all? Did that make you feel like he's on your side?
No. No, it did not.
Why not?
He talked about the health care plan. Where is his health care plan? People's health insurance premiums are going up. What is he doing for that? What is he doing for our seniors?
Yeah, just left you flat.
But Erica, you are a Trump supporter. You liked the speech, and you had some positive things to say. What did you think?
Yep, I'm glad he addressed the tax breaks. I haven't done ours yet, but I know there will be a huge change with the children tax break, and my husband works a lot of overtime, so I'm excited to see what that does. I think no senior should pay Social Security taxes. And then I liked how, I wish he would have stayed more on Iran, because I was already wondering and trying not to worry about it, but kind of not paying attention. But it sounds like he said if they're not going to go to nuclear, we don't have to do the FA. Find out. We don't want to find out.
Yeah, he said his preference was diplomacy.
Right.
Yeah.
But he will find out if he has to.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so curious about how you saw it.
The thing that I missed the most was a focus on the economy and looking forward. And Supreme Court struck the tariffs down, and he's going for another round of tariffs. And I also think that's the wrong direction. Tariffs cost our company a lot of money. Our costs are up, and we need to control our costs. And, without, raising rates, we can't give raises to our employees. We can't help them. So I'm stuck in that kind of vicious cycle of raise the rates, prices go up, raise the rates, and, how do we continue that?
So he didn't help you at all on the tariff stuff at all. But you said that you enjoyed this speech and that there were moments that moved you. What moved you about this speech?
Well, the celebrating people is always good, but again, that $18 trillion investment, the $25 million in Trump accounts. But I did hear something on the health care, right? We have a law, the Obamacare, the ACA, and we don't have a we don't have a way around it, and it's really just pooled care that's gone up every year. And this most favored nation, he's taken a stab at lowering the costs for us. And unless the legislature acts, he's at least doing something that's going to hit our pocketbook.
I think the part of the speech that's probably going to live on for most Republicans is when he asked the Congress, stand up if you think your duty is first to American citizens before illegal aliens. Republicans stood up. It gave him his most sustained applause for the night. I suspect, man, you're going to see this in a lot of campaign ads, that Democrats wouldn't stand up. What did you all think of the showmanship of that, or of sort of the spectacle of trying to get Democrats to stand up for that?
Well, I think the point, I think that and it may have gotten a little muddled, but, in the showmanship, but I think his point is valid. Everybody in that room represents the citizens in this country. And are you doing your job? He should, the governor asked, is Trump doing his job? Trump asked, are all of you doing your job?
But don't you think it was just kind of a cheap stunt? To just, you're somebody who's been in politics for a long time. To me, it seemed like a stunt. No matter what Trump told Democrats, stand up if I say anything. If he said stand up if you like puppies, they would have said we like kittens. There's no way they were going to stand up. So to me, he was just trying to make Democrats look bad. But should they have stood up, Pastor?
Mm-hmm. The role should be to unify the country. And I think this was the opportunity for us to come together as one. We're not a states of red or blue states, but we're the United States. And this was
Would you have stood up if you were a Democrat and Donald Trump said, stand up if you are against illegal immigrants, whatever he said, would you have stood up?
I would have respected our country, and I would have stood to my standards. And I would have stayed to my who I am.
Hold up. Are you noticing how the bar is basically underground? People are sitting there like, well, he celebrated some folks, so that was nice, while the actual governing is just vibes and applause lines. And that's the tell. When a president goes 108 minutes and people still come out asking, where's the healthcare plan? That's not nitpicking. That's an indictment. We've been hearing replace the ACA for what, a decade? It's always 2 weeks away. Always a concept. Always a mirage. Meanwhile, premiums keep climbing and families are the ones eating it. And the tariff piece? That business owner sounding stressed is the real economy. Tariffs are literally a tax that shows up as higher costs, squeezed wages and layoffs, but it sounds tough on TV. Also, that most favored nation drug pricing talk, okay, fine, but if you're serious, work with Congress instead of using it as a campaign prop.
Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. CNN reported before that speech that the House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries advised your caucus, the Democratic members, to either skip the State of the Union address or sit there in silence. Should you have just boycotted the address, and do you think you violated the guidelines set out by your own leader?
No, I think it was really unavoidable. The president talked about protecting Americans, and I just had to remind him that his administration was responsible for killing two of my constituents.
In Minneapolis, many members of your Democratic Party criticized their Republican counterparts when they interrupted President Biden's State of the Union address, as a lot of us remember. Do you have any regrets at all about the interaction we played between you and President Trump just last night?
I do not, and I think many people look at that moment when the president says it is our responsibility to protect Americans. And he does not acknowledge the fact that two Americans, two of my constituents, two of our neighbors were killed. And it was important for me to just remind the American people that the president and his administration was responsible for killing two American citizens.
With hindsight, Congresswoman, do you think you would have been better off boycotting the speech like so many other Democratic lawmakers did, or did you do the right thing by actually showing up there?
I brought 4 Minnesotans as guests for the Minnesota delegation. It was important for us to be there, to bear witness, to hold the space for our constituents that have lived through an occupation from federal law enforcement, that have been terrorized, that have seen our neighbors been killed and traumatized in so many ways. And so, no, I think it was really important for my constituents to see me there. It was really important to my constituents to hear that I was reminding the president that Renee Good and Alex Preddy were killed under this administration.
One of your guests, one of the guests that you brought to the State of the Union, was actually arrested by U.S. Capitol Police during President Trump's speech for allegedly disrupting the proceeding. Explain to our viewers, Congresswoman, what happened, and is she still in custody?
Yeah, you might remember Aliyah Rahman was the disabled woman who was headed to a doctor's appointment when ICE agents broke her window and forcibly dragged her, detained her, and she suffered concussion, many broken bones, and it was really important for me to have her here. And as she said this morning, you know, at the State of the Union, you can do 2 things. One is to sit, the other is to stand up, and she chose to stand up. We know that she was taken to the hospital after she was detained. Now she is back and safe.
I'm glad she's safe. Congressman Al Green was escorted out of the House chamber just minutes into President Trump's State of the Union address for holding a sign reading, "Black people aren't apes." What was your reaction to that?
I mean, isn't it just a sad moment for our country when a member of Congress has to remind the President of the United States that black people aren't apes? I mean, just for a moment, think about that. Al was escorted because he refused to sit down. And I stand with Al. I think it is an important moment in our nation's history that we have to take a stance like that. We have to remind a sitting president that we, black people, are not apes.
And as a lot of us, of course, remember, it was Trump who posted on social media that horrible racist picture of Michelle and Barack Obama as apes. And he apologized later, but it was simply an awful decision. He blamed one of his aides.
Man, listen to what's happening here. The message from the top is sit down, shut up, be polite. And the enforcement arm is like, cool, so we're arresting a disabled guest for standing? That is not normal. That's not decorum. That's a power flex. And Ilhan, Omar, and Rashida Tlaib catching heat for being loud? Of course they are. They've been the go-to targets for years because they're effective messengers on civil rights and immigration, and Trump world knows it. So the play is always the same. Delegitimize them, call them crazy, and then sneak in that disgusting send them back energy about U.S. citizens. Also, Al Green holding a sign that says black people aren't apes. If you're mad at him, instead of asking why that reminder is necessary in 2026, your priorities are cooked. This is what authoritarian politics looks like. Punish dissent, normalize cruelty, and call it order.
Quickly turn, while I have you, Congresswoman, to the Democratic response from Virginia's new governor, Abigail Spanberger. Let's watch a little bit of what she said last night.
We did not hear the truth from our president. So let's speak plainly and honestly. And let me ask you, the American people watching at home, 3 questions. Is the president working to make life more affordable for you and your family? Is the president working to keep Americans safe both at home and abroad? Is the president working for you?
And I just want to be precise. Trump did not formally apologize at all for posting that picture of the Obamas, that horrible picture of the Obamas. He simply blamed one of his aides for doing that.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah,
I was just going to correct you on that one.
Very important clarification. How would you evaluate Congresswoman Governor Spanberger's response that we all heard last night? And do you feel that Democrats should embrace that sort of message in the lead up to the upcoming midterm elections?
Yeah, I mean, the governor is my former classmate. We came to Congress together, and I thought last night her remarks were so on point. It was an incredible contrast from the mumbling that we heard from the president that did not have a clarity on what the American people wanted to hear and how the American people wanted the president to address the State of the Union. And the governor was very clear. And to answer those three questions, I think every single American would probably answer that question at this moment, no. And I do believe it is important for us to keep bringing that point home. The president is not making us safe at home or abroad. The president isn't making our lives more affordable, and the president isn't doing anything to create any sort of stability for the American people.
Bottom line, Congresswoman, do you have confidence that your Democratic Party's leadership right now is prepared to take on President Trump and his agenda ahead of the November midterm elections?
The Democrats have been united. We are prepared, and we believe that the American people are going to be with us come the primaries in November.
And here's the part that hits me like a brick. Spanberger didn't do the usual cable news slap fight. She did the thing adults do, set a basic standard and force a verdict. Those three questions are a trapdoor, because once you answer them honestly, the whole MAGA performance collapses. If your groceries are still up, your rent's still crushing you, and you feel less secure, not just from crime, but from chaos, then the 108-minute monologue was just noise. A reality TV season finale masquerading as governance. And notice how they tried to pivot to the racist Obama post like it's a staff mistake. Nah, that's the brand. The point is to insult, inflame, and then hide behind a nameless aide. So going forward, don't argue vibes. Demand outcomes. Vote like your nervous system depends on it, because it kind of does.